Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Just in the Nick of Crime. I'm glad that you guys are joining. We have a very special show today, and I'll get to that in a second. But before I do, wanted to come in and thank everybody. Thank my mods for coming here. Thanks for the viewers that are coming in here. You are watching this on TikTok. Keep tapping that screen. Get that up to 10,000. We're 2,400 away now from that. And if you are new here to the YouTube channel or even on TikTok, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you do not miss any of these stories. And again, thank you to my mods for holding everything down and giving everybody all of the information. Now, the last thing I will say real quick for the TikTok folks that are listening right now is that with this episode today, it's special. It's more than just me talking to the screen. And usually when I come on live, I'll let TikTok watch. We'll go on YouTube and you can hear both. You just won't necessarily see the graphics. Well, today we have a special guest, Jim Schmidt, who I like to refer to as Gabby's bonus dad. And if you follow me on TikTok, you probably see me live with him quite often because I consider him an incredibly good friend, and I just genuinely enjoy talking to him. But the reason that we're having this discussion today is it actually would have been today, March 19th, Gabby Petito's 26th birthday. So I feel like this is a really good day to have this conversation. And then additionally to that, there's a story that I wanted to share that kind of shares the same day, sort of. So one of my favorite, this is an older kind of true crime story, and it's one that I don't know why it's never been made into a movie. But the story of about John DeLorean, the creator of the DeLorean automobile, amongst many other things. In fact, there's not a car on the road today, anything that you drive that doesn't have something that he invented on it. Well, for those of y'all who don't know, the government, the FBI, purposely targeted him to try to take him down, and he ended up being acquitted. Spoiler alert. But it was for a drug trafficking scheme that he didn't want any part of. But the government, the FBI, literally targeted him just randomly. I'm not randomly. I'll get into theories and speculation on that in a minute, but it's a very interesting story. And again, why it hasn't been made into a movie, I don't really know. But before we do that, there's a couple other stories I want to talk to you about. And you guys know that I have to do the thing to pay the bills. Now, the first thing I'm going to pin this here for TikTok as well and on here. The first thing I have to do is tell you guys, if you have not purchased my book, Boundaries, yet, please consider to do that. It is a children's book. It is linked below on TikTok, and it is linked in the YouTube description if you want to purchase it. I've actually written 3 books in total, but this is the only one that I have left in my stock. To be very frank with you and very honest with you, I'm trying to eliminate this stock so I can buy all new and have the same quantities. So I have this both softcover and hardcover marked down to literally my cost of it. So it will never be cheap. It's impossible for it to go cheaper than what it is right now, basically. So if you want it, the copies will come signed. Usually in the checkout notes is a place that you can have me write a inscription to whoever, your child or whoever you want. So you can do that, but please purchase them. If you don't already, if you are limited contact with a family member, this is a great way to explain it to them. If you want to teach them what conditional relationships are so they can avoid them, it's a great resource for that. And if you want to teach them how to set boundaries within a family, it's a great resource for that too. So please take a look and purchase that. The next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is Substack. So I've talked about this the last couple of days on here. If you do not follow me on Substack yet, please consider doing so. There'll be a link dropped in the description notes here on YouTube, and for TikTok, there's already one at the link in my bio. If you go to my link tree, I think it's the second one down on my link tree. If you don't know what Substack is, it is a platform where creators can give you true independent journalism without censorship. And so sometimes if you see me in the video, hey, I'll break this down more in a Substack. On my shorts, my TikTok videos, I only want my videos to be about 1 minute and 30 seconds if I can, because, attention. But for those who want more information, it's a really great way to do it. It's free to join. It does have a paid option, but I will never make news. You have to pay for any type of news. People who want to pay to support my content, that's appreciated, and you guys can definitely do that, but you don't have to do that. It's free, and I think that you guys will really enjoy it if you enjoy my content. The next thing I want to talk about that I would be remiss if I didn't promote, especially today, of all days with Jim here, he seems smiling backstage, is with my good friend and co-host and partner, Dan Catullo, who's a director producer out of Hollywood. We started a podcast called Real Victims. We have 1 episode out at this point, and it was with Jim and Nikki Schmidt, Gabby's parents, to talk about the Lifetime movie that was made about them without their permission. And it gives you insight to things that you probably don't know about this case. Things about the Lifetime movie, what's real, what's fiction, and gave them a chance to kind of speak out against the way Hollywood handled their situation, who basically Lifetime looked at it as a money grab. Like, they didn't reach out to them. They didn't offer them any money. They didn't donate to the foundation, nothing. And we talk about that, and they kind of go through that movie and tell you what they got right and what didn't. Um, so that's what we have going on there. Now, before we get into Jim on here, a couple more stories. I want to just give a brief update. So we've been talking about this Sudiksha Konanki story for a while with Josh Riibe. And after the show yesterday, if you might have seen the videos on in shorts, but after yesterday afternoon, evening, police in Dominican Republic, or judge in the Dominican Republic, said basically that Josh is no longer a person of interest. He is free to go. He was just a witness, and he can go. But there's a caveat to that, because as of now, and I checked right before I got on today, the caveat to that is that he is allowed to go as far as the island goes because they have not given him his passport back. They've told him that a judge has said you are free to leave the country, but they have not given him his passport back, and it's unclear as to when that's going to happen. We know that there's another hearing for him on the 28th. His dad is down there with him to kind of, moral support and stay with him till he goes home. But, it's absolutely wild. And I'm just going to say real quick, I think that this is a very unfortunate accident, what happened to Sudiksha. I think the more and more you look at this, the more evidence points to, an accidental drowning or something like that. I think they were both very inebriated. And I don't know that to be true, but that's what, basically looking at this, that's what I believe that it is. I think that you had two people that were very drunk, and a tragic event occurred. That's just my opinion. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, this story is very interesting. I'm going to make this bigger for y'all. I don't know if Jim's even heard about this story yet, but I'm going to show you this map. Let me do it this way. There we go. And if you are on TikTok, you can't see it. You'd have to jump over to YouTube. So apparently a website came out called Doge Quest. All right. A website came out called Doge Quest. And it's already been taken down, I think, by the FBI. But I want to if you are a Tesla owner, you definitely want to listen to this. So as you all know, there's been a lot of turmoil with the Tesla brand, with Elon Musk, et cetera, right? There's been a lot of turmoil with that. Well, what's ended up happening was this came out. Oh, actually, let me not put the cart before the horse. Yesterday, a bunch of cars were set on fire, and there was an attack at a service center in Las Vegas. Then today they were kicked out. Tesla was kicked out of the Vancouver Auto Show. And then the news came out about this. So what this website is, what Doge Quest is basically these hackers went in and not only showed every single charging station where Teslas were, every single dealership where you see the little Doge dogs, those are all Doge employees. And he gave all of their personal information, their names, phone numbers, email addresses, last known addresses, everything, basically doxed the entire Doge team. But he also doxed every single Tesla owner out there. You own a Tesla and you were registered to, in the company, which you would have been, your information is out there now. Also, your name, the car that you drive, your email address, your phone number, every single thing about you. And they said that they are willing to take your information down if you can provide proof. If you can provide proof that you sold the car. So that's going on right now in the world of Tesla. And interestingly enough, I kind of want to, there's been a statement, Musk did kind of give a statement, so let me give that yet. So they were talking about the rise in attacks, and Elon basically said that he was shocked by the rise in vandalism and destruction of Tesla vehicles, going on to say that he and his company had never done anything harmful, and that people taking action against his vehicles were simply bad people. So that is kind of where all of that is at. If you have a Tesla owner, beware that your information has been leaked out there. This website has been taken down. He also leaked the head of the FBI, Kash Patel's personal information, and people were coming at him basically to Kash Patel saying, you need to take this down. You need to take this down, get the website down. And last check, it was not up anymore. But again, it's something that you should be aware of. And I actually just got a pop up that said Josh Riibe has left the resort that he was staying at, so he might be finally getting ready to go home. I'll try to get an answer for that before the end of the show. Now, that being said, let's move in to talk about Gabby Petito. So most of y'all probably know the story of Gabby. If not, there's plenty of things out there to look at, and that's not really what I want to focus on today. Is her story. I want to talk about her legacy a little bit more. And if you are on TikTok, you will not be able to hear this conversation unless you jump over to YouTube. But I don't want to, I don't want to mull on the past. I want to talk about what they're doing moving forward. But today would have been her 26th birthday, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on, and we're gonna chat about it. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hey, what's going on? I'm sorry, there's a bird screaming behind me just now as soon as you bring me up. So
that's okay. It happens. It happens. Maybe it's, maybe it's a sign.
It could be. It's either the dogs barking inside or the birds outside. So
it's life. Well, how are you guys handling today? I know y'all went to the bench.
Yeah, I mean it's always a rough day. These occasions used to be happy occasions. Birthdays, for your children is always an amazing day to celebrate. Even when they get older, they're still your kids. But it's kind of taken on new meaning now for us with Gabby. It's definitely a sad day, a day that we all miss her immensely, because she's not here with us. But we still take the opportunity to celebrate her and honor her. And her sisters baked her a cake last night, so we're having cake tonight for her. And
that's awesome.
We went down to the bench today, and some people had decorated it with balloons for her birthday and brought some flowers, which was really nice. And then we went to her favorite beach. There's a restaurant right there, and we met Rose. And we had lunch together, and it was it's just a nice day. And now we're back home. So
it sounds like a nice day.
Yeah, it was. It certainly was. We kind of just took a break from everything, and I took the day off from work. Because it's important to be with your family. I think on days like this, and just
and I know today's a heavy day, so I think it's a good decision on your part.
Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about, because you've just become a walking encyclopedia when it comes to DV stats at this point, and it's something that you were thrust into kind of unwillingly. But I would consider you an expert whether you do or not. But I kind of wanted to chat about what you guys have been doing with the foundation. And by the way, I've dropped the foundation link in the show notes, but it's gabbypetitofoundation.org. If you would like to donate or go pick up, some merch from there, I can tell you firsthand that I have several things from their store clothing wise, a hoodie and t-shirts and stuff like that. And it is really super high quality. So go do that. But in the meantime, what have you all been doing, with the foundation?
Oh my God, it's been incredibly busy, in a good way, but at the same token, like it's bittersweet. Like we wish we could be put out of business tomorrow. Like there wasn't a need for any of this stuff. That we just lived in a peaceful place and didn't have to worry about it. But that's not the reality of the world we live in. And it's going on 4 years now, and I think at this point the foundation has really started to grow into what we were hoping that it would, and really focusing our efforts on prevention and education. When we first started out, we were kind of trying to find our way, and we started making connections within the domestic violence world, missing persons world, and trying to find where are the gaps in services, where can we make an impact and help people the most. And there's so many great organizations out there that provide a tremendous amount of resources to survivors and missing persons organizations out there. So on the missing persons end of it, we try to elevate the voices of people whose stories are not getting out there, and doing what we can to try to bring their cases to the forefront, trying to bring some resolution to the families, working with some of our contacts in the media to try to get their stories out there, and then link them with resources. And on the DV end, that's a whole another realm of its own. And on that end, a lot of what we do is reactive in society in general. I've been in the fire service 25 years, and you call 911 and we show up and we fix your problem. But we don't spend a lot of time in the beginning of doing risk reduction and preventing that stuff from ever happening, which we're trying to get better at that. And so the same thing applies in the DV world, where a lot of those resources are absolutely necessary, whether it's shelter needs, transitional housing needs, legal assistance, mental health services, or whatever it might be, help with the court system. Like all of that stuff is necessary, but it's reacting to an incident that already occurred. So our goal is to really try to hone in on the prevention and education. And, if we can start getting to our youth, which we actually, for the first time, have been invited to a school. We had last month, we went to a high school locally here in Florida, and we spoke to 200 criminal justice students about respectful relationships, talked about Gabby, and really connected with them. And we actually got a lot of feedback from them in a positive way. We've also connected and done a lot of training and education with first responders, which is my world, fire and EMS world. And in the last 2 months, I think we've had the ability to connect with almost 1,000 people, either in person or online, doing different educational programs. And we're going to continue to build on that, and just trying to basically make as many people as we can an advocate to be aware of all the subtle signs that we miss before it turns to, the tragic situation we had. So that is really what we're working on.
That's absolutely
on top of legislation and other stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you want to tell the people a little bit about some of the legislation that you guys, even if it's just lightly to touch on it, some of the legislation that you guys are getting involved in or have been involved in.
Yeah, Joe, Gabby's dad is really the guy when it comes to legislation. Like he has such an amazing ability to get on the phone and connect with them. And when he calls, they pick up the phone and they listen. But we've been able to pass laws in a couple of states. So Utah being the first one. So the lethality assessment, which is basically at the time of interaction for law enforcement when they are on scene with a victim and an abuser, where they would ask, it's not just asking a series of questions to the victim in that moment. It's if they answer them a certain way, connecting them to services immediately if they're willing to take it, and start safety planning for them. But it also provides additional training for them to be able to go to those victims and ask those questions in a trauma-informed way, so it doesn't seem judgmental. Open up, and they will hopefully speak to them and start getting them to safety. And the ultimate goal of that lethality assessment is to prevent, I guess I got to be YouTube friendly too, unaliving by DV. So when that program is instituted, it's been successfully proven to reduce drastically that rate of unaliving by domestic violence, like substantially. So we got that passed in Utah. In the last year since that's been instituted, they've seen an 87% increase in people reaching out for services. So more people are realizing at that moment, at that interaction point, that they are in a potentially lethal position and that they need help. So, I mean, that unfolds a whole nother issue with making sure they have the resources available and the funding available to support them. But it's disturbing in one instance because that many people need it, but it's good that the people that do need it are reaching out. We passed a similar law here in Florida, which they're still working through getting that. That's now going back up to the state legislation here. Their final draft from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, where Joe, he was the chairman of the board, who sat with law enforcement and the domestic violence, state domestic violence organization here in Florida to build a good plan for them. They're going to present it to the legislation here, make sure it meets everything in the statute, and then they're going to be rolling that out and starting the training by the end of the year here. Missing persons bills, just trying to do what we can to, make things better for survivors, make things easier for people reporting missing persons, and ultimately try to prevent tragedy from happening.
I could be pulling this out of thin air, so we'll keep it YouTube friendly. But did Joe say at one point that is it one of the places where, I don't know if it was a county or a city or something, that because of the new legislation, that you guys saw like something like a 70-something% reduction?
So
am I somewhere in the realm of something?
So like here in Florida, they've been Gainesville, Florida, the city of Gainesville has been using the lethality assessment for the Maryland Network to End Domestic Violence, their protocol, for well over a decade now. And they were one of the highest rates of domestic violence unalivings in the state of Florida. And since they instituted that like a decade ago, they're now one of the lowest. And that was kind of like the example here in Florida, saying, I mean, and that's a college town, University of Florida is there. So there's a high rate of that amongst college students. And so they saw a drastic reduction. And that was like one of the examples that we use, like, hey, it works. Like, it's been used here. It works.
I don't remember. I can't remember if I told you this or not. But when I was down in Atlanta a couple weeks ago visiting my brother's very much involved in politics in Georgia, like very. Um, anyways, he knows like Georgia. So basically, Georgia's current governor's about to term out. And so he knows the person who's probably going to be the front. He's like been friends for years with the person who's going to be the front runner for governor. Plus, he's friends with a lot of state senators, state congressmen, both Democrat and Republican. And so I got him on the phone while I was there with Joe, and I think that Georgia's now going to be another target starting in the next session, which will be basically next April because they're about to close, but they're going to start the groundwork now.
Yeah.
For that because they'll basically end up in the session in April and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I know George has been contacting us, North Carolina, New Jersey, Oklahoma, quite a few places. So, we're trying to get it in all 50 states wherever we can. But we don't want to take on too much. We want to make sure that we can be impactful in areas that are coming to us first, and then keep building off of that, and hopefully others see it, and then they'll take the initiative and start doing it on their own as well.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit real quick, because one thing that I love that you have information. I don't love that you have the information, but I'm appreciative of it, I should say, is you have a lot of information on DV statistics in general. And what are some statistics or some information that you want, like that people? I mean, every time I talk to you, when we get into statistics, I always learn something new, and I talk to you quite a bit, and I still always learn something new. So, what are some of the things that you really think that people need to know? And the other things too. I'm going to give you two other parts to this, so you can answer how you want. One is if somebody's in that situation after do statistics or whatever, what advice would you give them? And if you had somebody who you knew was a bystander or who was a bystander, what advice would you give them in that situation?
That's amazing. So let me get into that first before we start getting the statistics, because we're finding more and more as we have these open conversations, which we should be having these conversations, these difficult conversations that oftentimes we don't want to discuss. It's a hard thing to talk about, but it's very necessary, because when it comes to DV, it affects everyone. There is nobody that is left out by it. It doesn't affect one population and not the other. It doesn't matter your socioeconomical status. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter your age, where you live. It affects everyone. Your religion. It is all over the world, and we've gotten messages from all over the world from people about it. And so it's an everyday thing, and we like to think that it's, or people like to say that it's a closed door thing, it's a private thing, it happens behind closed doors, but it's not a private thing when that violence spills out into the street and other bystanders are affected by it. We have crime in our consistent crime in our neighborhoods. It's costing our medical legal system billions of dollars a year. It is a huge, huge, huge issue. And so if you are experiencing it yourself, or somebody that is, the best thing you can do is be a good, supportive, empathetic friend to them. Don't push them away. Don't shame them, blame them in any way. Their whole mental well-being is being broken down and being manipulated every single day, to the point where they don't know which side is up from down. And the last thing they need is for anybody else to be judging them for what they're going through or why they're not leaving. There's so many reasons why they stay and they don't leave. And that's not for us to judge. When they're ready and it's safe to, and they're able to navigate safely through it, they will try to leave if they can. And so if they're going through that, you just be there and be that ear for them to listen, provide advice, be open for them, keep your phone on when they're ready to call. If you know somebody going through it, they don't have to be the one to call for help. You can call and you can ask for help yourself. And we always recommend, because we don't know where everybody lives, the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So that's 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233, 1-800-799-SAFE. And you can call and they will give you advice over the phone. You can even text. And, they're very busy. Sometimes you don't get through on the first tries, but stick with it. And just be there for them, be open for them. And if you're going through it yourself, a lot of times the best way to navigate your situation for your own safety, for your children's safety, for your pet safety. Make sure that you're planning safely with somebody that is kind of an expert in this, that can help you get out. So calling that number, and they will, if you have the ability to do it, or you have the ability to text, or you can have a friend do it and start building that safety plan. You can't just leave. It doesn't work that way, because when there's a separation, that's the most dangerous time, when they get reunited. So building that safety plan for a safe way to get out for you, your children, if they're involved, your pets. And then when you're ready and it's safe and it's time to do so, there are services out there. And I know it's difficult depending on where we live in the country. You know, some areas have more resources than others, but start with that hotline, you know, and they can kind of direct you. Domesticshelters.org is another organization too, where you can go on their website and you can pull up and they'll give you resources in your area as well. You type in your address and they will also give you some resources, but it's just to reach out, because there is help out there, and we want everybody to know that. If you go to our website too, we're starting to get more and more resources on there that you can click on to take you to those sites to hopefully get you to where you need to go. And that's the one thing we recommend right off the bat. When it comes to statistics, you know, 1 in 3 women, 1 in 5, or 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men will experience DV or SA in their lifetime. It's about 12 million in a single year. So it's about 24 people every minute are experiencing that somewhere in the United States, 24 people. And that's just the ones that we know about. We know a large majority of the people do not report that they're going through this for whatever reason. They're afraid, they're scared, you know, there's shame or embarrassment or fear of they won't be believed. So that's just on the numbers that of people who report. And we believe those numbers are a heck of a lot higher than that, but we don't know about it until they finally come forward and look for help. I'll tell you that there's one demographic of population in the United States and in Canada that are at an exponentially higher rate of DV and SA in this country, and it's our indigenous population. So when we talk about 1 in 3 women in the United States, for indigenous women, that number is like 4 and 5. So 83 to 85% of indigenous women will be a victim of DV or SA in their lifetime. About 65% of them will be a victim of SA. 85% will be a victim of DV. They have a better chance of being a victim of DV or SA than they do of going to college. The third leading cause of death in indigenous women is unaliving homicide. I mean, it's a terrible statistic. Alaskan natives, that number is like almost 100%.
Can we also add, for people who are listening, it's not other indigenous people typically doing this to them?
No, and the majority of that is non-indigenous versus indigenous persons. They also have some of the highest missing persons rates in the country, at a rate 10 times higher than any other population, and the majority of their cases go uninvestigated, unresolved. When they're put into the systems, like there was one, they just found remains in South Dakota of a person about a week and a half ago. And when I see stories like that, I go right on to NamUs and I start looking in the area for, you know, who's in the system. And I couldn't find anybody in that area that would have met the description of a Native American female. And that's because she was put into the system wrong. They listed her as the wrong ethnicity. So when I was narrowing down my search, and so many other people were, this person's name never came up, and it took the criminal investigations unit in South Dakota some time to figure out that it was this woman that was missing. So there's a lot of disparities in the reporting for them. They get no attention, and it's really pretty disheartening. So we're going to do what we can to continue to elevate their voices and stand with them, and stand with everybody for that matter, to try to reduce these numbers drastically. We want to see that 1 in 3 drop to 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 until it's gone. That 4 and 5 number for indigenous, same thing. We want to see all those numbers drop, and we feel prevention and education is the way that we can get to the population, start talking to them, teaching them respectful relationships, boundaries. You mentioned your book earlier. That is a great book to start introducing boundaries to young children and start building off that as they get older, and then hoping that we can prevent it. You know, we might not see it in our generation, but for future generations, seeing you know, a tremendous difference in this across the country.
Yeah, I know. You know, honestly, until I met you guys, I had no clue how bad it was with the indigenous community. And, you know, what's interesting is, like, we have the story that's going on right now with Emily Pike. And if you guys don't know this story, it is definitely one of the more brutal ones that I've talked about. In fact, maybe tomorrow, depending on how scheduled goes, maybe I need to do a show talking about her a little bit more. We've done videos, but it doesn't get a lot of updates, and typically when people, I'm just going to call it what it is. When people see somebody of color, typically they scroll on.
It's sad, but I've seen it even on TikTok lives, where people highlight Amber Alerts, and as soon as you put that a child, and it's a child of color, you see the views drop. We see it on our missing persons pages, the amount of shares, likes, comments, interactions, or the focus a lot of times on a person of color is not so much on the person, but they'll find like a bunch of negative things to put out there in the forefront versus this is a person who's missing and their loved ones are looking for them. We're all human beings, and everybody deserves to have their loved ones located, their cases resolved to the best of the ability. And Emily is a huge example. So if that is not the name, the person, a 14-year-old child that had the most horrific, barbaric things that I could ever imagine happen to anyone, let alone a child. If that's not reason right there to say we need to change and we need to start helping, and this matters, and not label these kids as runaways or not turn a blind eye because they look a certain way, this is the time now to do it, because what happened to that girl should not have happened to her and so many others just like her. And it's happening every day.
Let's tell them let's just be brutal, rip the Band-Aid. What happened to her was she was 14. She ran away and she was found on the side of the road, dismembered in garbage bags.
And they have not found her hands or her feet.
And they've not found her hands or her feet. Yeah.
In garbage bags.
Brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal. And there's no, and then from what I understand, there's been no real, pressure for them to try to find who this person that did this. And so you have somebody out there willing to do this to somebody, and you're not even concerned enough about the rest of the community to try to find this person.
Somebody who can do that to a child, let alone anybody in this world, has no indifference for human life. They have no remorse for what they've done. They're a terrible person, and they are a threat. And this needs to be resolved immediately. And that the other thing is she was labeled as a runaway. That bothers me so much when they put that label on a child as a runaway, because it's so hard to say that, well, they're just a frequent runaway versus, is that kid being lured out of the house? Is somebody getting to them through a video game or a chat group or online somewhere through some platform? And a lot of these predators prey on vulnerable kids that have, whether it's issues at home, issues at school, financial issues, whatever it is, they prey on them and they look for that vulnerability, and that's how they get them, and they get them out. And then boom, oh, there's a runaway. And then you find something like this. We just had another one down here in Florida. Same thing, listed as a runaway, found the same way, 16 years old. So I don't like that runaway thing at all. They're just missing.
The thing is, even if they are a runaway, there's a reason why they, like you said, why they ran away. Maybe it was somebody grooming them and try to get them. Maybe it was, there was a situation at home that they felt they had. Happy kids don't run away for the most part. They might make dumb decisions and go off and meet somebody because that's a dumb decision, but that's a different discussion altogether. But Emily had a family, but she was in and out of a group home. And there's a reason why she kept being a frequent runaway. So one is there's a root cause, but two, at the end of the day, a 13, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old shouldn't be out on their own. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the ability to go like rent even a hotel room. There's no, they need to take it seriously. And what's really, a few months ago, there was a girl who went missing not far from, a town or two over. Black girl had went missing. She didn't show up to her job at Zaxby's, or didn't show up after she left it. And they ultimately ended up finding her. But I called I was trying to spread awareness. I hadn't heard any updates. So I called the police and I said, hey, I just want to know an update. They didn't even know who I was talking about. But you know what? If in that same response, if I called them and said, hey, Sebastian Rogers, they would know exactly who I'm talking about. So, it really is. It really is. You can see that it's one-sided.
It is. My dogs are going nuts. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're human.
Yeah, and a lot of these kids are more prone to being trafficked. So it's just so many variables out there these days. And I believe I was just talking to somebody yesterday. I believe in South Dakota they have legislation that there's no such thing as a runaway. They're just all missing.
I think that's great. That's definitely a step in the right direction.
I'd love to see every place do that.
But before I let you out and spend the rest of the time, with family and celebrating, or honoring Gabby today, anything else that you want to add that we haven't talked about?
Man, I mean, there's so much stuff, and I mean, me, I love statistics. Not that I love it, but
I know you mean.
I remember it, and I got my whole. I take lots of notes, and I got my book here, and last time we talked about this stuff. I think we kind of got flagged on a couple of social media platforms because it was. So I will say the word "regulation" because I don't think I could say the actual word. But some of those statistics out there because they're really alarming, and so people who wrangle other people, intimate partners, are single-handedly the most dangerous people who walk the face of the earth. It's something that's often glorified and made to seem like it's nothing on television, between TV shows, UFC, Ultimate Fighting, or WWE wrestling, things like that. The rear naked chokeholds and all this other stuff where it's fine, we do it all the time. But the fact of the matter is that any time that any pressure is placed on a person's neck, causing irreversible damage to that person's brain, and so much can go wrong with that people really need to be cognizant of that. So whether they think it's just a playful thing or it's not a serious thing, it is a very serious thing. And somebody who puts their hands around the neck of an intimate partner even one time, that victim has a 750% higher chance of being unalived by that person. It's not a matter of if, it's will. It is one of the precursors that will predict almost 100% of the time you being unalived by them. And yet 90% of the people who are arrested and charged with that felony, and it's a felony in all 50 states, are never prosecuted because of that crime. It's usually downgraded, it's dropped, time served, whatever it may be. And it's because it's almost called like the perfect crime, because 50% of the people who ever have strangulation done to them have no external marks on their body. It only takes about 4.4 pounds of pressure, 4.4 pounds on the jugular veins. So on the outside of your neck here is your jugular veins. That takes deoxygenated blood from your brain back down to your heart and your lungs to get more oxygen and come back up. Your brain is one organ that is the most sensitive to oxygen deprivation. So just 4.4 pounds on there, and that's enough pressure to restrict the flow and to keep that deoxygenated blood in your brain to start causing problems. And what happens is we start building up intracranial pressure. They become at risk for strokes, petechiae hemorrhaging, which is little blockages in the brain, traumatic brain injuries, all sorts of things. And so it is very serious. Our carotid arteries run right here. These are what take oxygen and blood up to the brain. It's about 11 pounds of pressure on there to restrict that. And it doesn't take long for somebody to pass out and become unalived by this. People think, well, it takes a long time. It could happen within 30 seconds to 2.5, 3 minutes, and they're done. And so it causes irreversible damage, and that damage might not happen right away. It could take days, weeks, even months for some of those long-term effects to happen, or for you to perish from those injuries. So if somebody puts their hands on your neck even once, you should definitely go seek medical direction, get help. A CTA scan is the gold standard for viewing, making sure that the carotids aren't damaged, make sure that you have good flow in your brain, good blood flow, and getting help. Because if they do that to you, there's a good chance that the next time they do it is going to be the last time. And that's just something that we're trying to point out, especially to our first responders, that if they respond to these calls, they're very serious. They may not appear that way when they arrive on scene. They might have some very subtle signs that they've been wrangled, memory loss, maybe they've soiled their pants. Their throat might be a little scratchy or hoarse. Um, they might have, some slight breathing changes or some painful swallowing, things that may not seem life-threatening, but if it's not looked into and checked right away by emergency room staff, and they don't get that specific diagnostic testing, it can have fatal results, days, hours, days, weeks down the line. So it's just something that we're trying to bring more and more attention to, because that's ultimately how Gabby was taken.
Yeah,
And I
every
believe
time
that was the first.
every time I hear that statistic, and I've heard it from you, I don't know, probably a dozen times, my mind is still blown every time. Honestly, it's just
It is.
it's a
It's
terrible statistic.
yeah. It's it is, and I wish it wasn't the truth, but I mean, I got a whole book. I mean, it's really there's some great organizations out there that do training on it. They do like a 1 hour awareness online. They have an 8 hour course. They have a 40 hour course. They have like a 2 week advanced course, and now there's even a whole course now on children that experience this. So it is really involved. Uh, there's so much to it, and yet it's not treated very seriously, because a lot of times there's very little marks left on the outside of the body, and yet it's causing such severe damage.
It's hard to charge for what you can't see, and if you don't go get medical attention, then it
Yeah,
becomes more difficult.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
like I said, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about all of this today. I know that it's never an easy topic. I know it's her birthday, so I felt it would be a good day to kind of have this discussion, and help with that legacy and that advocacy. And here's what I'll say too: for the people that are listening to this on all three platforms that are hearing, I guess on TikTok you can't really hear what we're talking about, but for everybody else listening to it on the other platforms, if every one of y'all just went to the Gabby Petito Foundation.org and hit the donate button and gave $1, just $1, it would make a huge difference, because Jim and Nikki and Joe and Tara, through the Gabby Petito Foundation, they pay out of their own pocket to go to these places, to speak, to help educate. And, sometimes it gets expensive to do this and to advocate. And they're not at a point yet where they can get federal funding. So they're trying to build to that. So anybody that can help, I'm just going to encourage you again, go donate if you can. If you can't, then, at least share a missing persons picture on your own social media. Go purchase merch if you can. The merch is phenomenal. And anything else you want to add?
No, I was going to just ask, to honor her on her birthday. Like, the best thing that we can ask anybody to do is share missing persons flyers today. If you know somebody going through a DV situation, reach out to them and just be that helping hand, be that empathetic person to listen and help guide them when they're ready. That's the biggest thing that you guys can do today, and that would mean the world to us and all of the other families that are going through what we went through.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And especially if you know somebody who is a person of color or indigenous, everybody needs the attention. Everybody deserves the attention, but those are the very neglected groups of people when it comes to this kind of stuff. All right, Jim. Well, I appreciate you, and
Hey, thank you.
I'm sure I'll be online with you again later today or tomorrow. All
Yeah, I'll talk to you a little later, I'm sure.
right, sounds good, man.
All righty. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. So, real quick, I actually hold on. I want to use this because I never get to use this. I have something. Isn't that nifty? Josh Riibe, we talked about this at the beginning of the show. He is on his way back to the United States. I don't believe that he's gotten his passport back yet, but he has been given, it looks like, some emergency travel documentation from the U.S. Embassy in the Dominican Republic, and local authorities have allowed him to leave. So he is, as we speak, en route on his way back to the United States. So pretty big news that I wanted to share with you guys as that came through. Again, real quick, please, if you can, GabbyPetitoFoundation.org, donate if you can. I forgot to put this up while we were talking about it. Let me real quick. Hold on. There we go. Please donate if you can. It's a really great cause. It's a really great thing that they do. It'd be great for her birthday, and again, at the very least, share a photo. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is kind of an old story, but I think that this is a really cool story. So today is the anniversary, or sorry, it's the birthday of Gabby Petito, but it is also the 20th anniversary of the death of automotive mogul maverick John DeLorean. And this year in January would have been his 100th birthday. So I kind of wanted to share this story because I think it's really interesting. Whether you're a car enthusiast or not, most people see this car and you know exactly what the car is and the man on the hood. If you see that is the creator, John DeLorean, but he was so much more than that. He got himself entangled into a scandal involving cocaine, and I will explain that, with the federal government targeting him, specifically pulling him into the scandal, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. But he created the muscle car. He created the GTO, which sparked the muscle car era, arguably. There's not a single car that's on the road today that doesn't have a feature that he pioneered. This is a man who was married to a supermodel. He didn't confine himself to the norms of a typical automotive engineer. He got plastic surgery. He was all over the place, kind of a playboy when he was younger, and basically ultimately decided in the mid 70s to leave General Motors, where he was quickly ascending to power, to executive leadership, to start his own company. And for the reason was he felt that GM was unethical at that time. I'm not saying my opinion on them now or not, but at that time he felt that they were unethical, that they were trying to sell consumers a vehicle, as he put it, because it had new bins and metals, but not because of other features that would help. Right. So anyway, so he builds his car. As you guys know, it was used in Back to the Future after the company. And he gets to a point where he needs money. He builds the car in Belfast, Northern Ireland, under the agreement that he'll get subsidies from the British government upon meeting certain quotas. And what ends up happening is the British government purposely delays those subsidies in order so that the company doesn't meet the production numbers, the quotas that were required. So ultimately, what their goal was by doing that was trying to keep the people striking so they wouldn't make the number, so that they could try to absorb DeLorean Motor Company in the state-of-the-art factory into the British Leyland Motor Group, which controlled a lot of the British automakers back at that time and was government funded. Then on this side of the pond, you had the FBI. Literally, as the story goes, an FBI agent walks into work one day, sees John DeLorean's picture hanging up on the wall, and he says, "Who is that?" And they're like, "That's your next mark." And they're like, "Well, who is he?" He's like, "Well, that's John DeLorean." He's like, "Well, who the hell's John DeLorean?" And anyways, they create this sting operation where the FBI, our FBI, is posing as cartel leaders, cartel members, saying that they will help fund. He doesn't know that they're cartel at this point, but saying that they will fund, get him the funds that he needs to keep his car company afloat. And he's all into that. Then he finds out that it involves cocaine and cocaine trafficking. And when he finds out what it is, he doesn't want any part of it. He wants to be completely out of this. And he kind of makes that known. And he gets a message back from them, again, the FBI posing as cartel, that if you back out of our deal, we will send you your daughter's head in a box. So he calls his attorney, unsure what to do about the situation. He's like, "I don't want to participate in this." So his attorney advised him, "Go to the meeting, don't commit to anything. And it'll buy us some time." So he goes to the meeting. They end up handing him a bag of the product. He hefts it. He's like, "Oh, wow, that's worth more than gold," when they tell him the value of it. And then the FBI comes in and arrests him. And he didn't commit to doing anything. He didn't commit to buy anything. And ultimately, he was found acquitted. Something very interesting is that one of the lead investigators on his case from the FBI stepped down from the FBI because of this case to testify on DeLorean's behalf. And a few years later was found murdered, shot to death in his office. And because of that, because of all the things that showed that he really wasn't part of it, he was effectively acquitted. But the goal wasn't to try to get a conviction. The goal was to try to ruin his company. And that was successful. He never financially recovered from what happened to DeLorean Motor Company. In fact, when he was 80 years old and he died, he was selling watches on the internet. The guy who invented the GTO, invented the DeLorean, invented the Pontiac Firebird, so many of these other cars. literally died selling watches on the internet because of what happened. And at the end of his trial, they asked him if he was going to get back into the automotive business, and he said, "Well, would you even buy a used car for me at this point?" Nobody trusted him because of what they were able to do. And I will tell you my personal opinion. This is an opinion. It's been long speculated. Is that while you had one side being the British government kind of trying to deal with him, on the other side, I believe that you go back to Detroit in the 1970s, 1980s. GM had deep pockets and deep connections. And I think that my opinion, and it's been long thought, not proven, that GM had something to do with it. But what's very interesting about this case and why I'm sharing it with you today is that a lot of the entrapment laws that we now have on the books today are specifically because of this case. So that's kind of my story with that. And I kind of wanted to share it to you since it's, again, it would have been his 100th birthday in January and it's his 20th anniversary of dying, of his death. Kind of wanted to share that. So anyways, that's kind of, and by the way, I know Karen said, I wish I had DeLorean. I actually do have a DeLorean. So that's kind of why I it's an important story to me and things like that. I've always found it very fascinating. I don't really know why a movie hasn't been made about it. Like a feature film, because it has all the makings of like a blockbuster. Anyways, that being said, guys, this is what I have today. We'll be back probably tomorrow or Friday with another thing. I'm trying to do this a lot more. If this is your first time watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that bell notification so that you don't miss any of these stories, any of these updates when we go live. And at the same time with TikTok, if you're in there for the first time, or Instagram, make sure to hit that as well. And I'll see you guys next time.